The BlackBerry Z10 is finally on sale in the United States. It arrives at a time when most people are choosing between Android and iOS, but those aren't the only players in town. How does the Z10 compare to the Nokia Lumia 920, another phone for people looking to break out from Android and iOS dominance? Here's a comparison between the Z10 and the 920, the two phones in a race for third place. Let's start by looking at the different design philosophies of each phone. You can tell by looking at the Z10 that it's a little more understated, well, actually a lot more understated, because it's more of a black rectangle. It also comes in white, but it has some small, subtle design elements to it, but you can see it's mostly a box and it's simple, but it's still very nice. The Lumia 920, on the other hand, obviously stands out because of the color choices. Comes in cyan, blue, red, orange, white, gray, or black if you want to keep it simple. But it also has a little bit more curve to it, and it's thicker. This measures at 10.7 millimeters, while the Z10 measures at 9 millimeters. And this is also a little heavier. It's 185 grams, while the Z10 is only 137. So it's not huge difference, but you will notice that the Lumia 920 is definitely heavier and it's not gonna feel as comfortable in your pocket. You know, I managed to get along with it on days when I carry this without issue, but obviously it's bigger. When you look at it in terms of height, they kind of look the same when you stand them up, but the 920 is slightly wider. Depending on which phone you get, the 920 can have a very solid mate polycarbonate material on the back, or it can be a glossy plastic depending on the color you choose. Either one is going to feel fine. I prefer the mate finish that you get on certain colors, and it feels nice. Now the Z10, on the other hand, to me this just feels much nicer. When you touch the back material, it has these tiny little pockets that are inverted on them, and it's very smooth, it's comfortable to hold, and it's very nice just to touch this device. I think the Z10 from a design perspective is one of the simplest but nicest phones that we've seen in the past year, and that's saying a lot because we've seen a lot of phones. Now, there's actually some similarities between them. They both have the same resolution, 1280 by 768, but the difference is the Lumia 920 has a 4.5-inch screen, while the Z10 has a 4.2-inch screen. Now, 4.2 is still very good to me. The 4.5 might be a little bit bigger and a little bit better for some people, but in terms of resolution, they're both going to look very nice, very clear. You're not going to have any issues with text looking bad or colors not looking appropriate on either device. So really, it boils down to preference, and I prefer the 920 because the visibility outdoors is much nicer. When you go into settings, you can change the brightness, and you can see it has automatically adjust, and it determines when you're outside because it has this thing for visibility built into the phone. So when you have auto on, once it determines that you're outside, it immediately sees that, and you can display the screen very well, and the text is legible. It's not going to be obviously as good as it is indoors, but in terms of outdoor visibility, it's probably the best on the market from what I've seen in recent times. Now, the Z10 has its own little advantage when it comes to brightness. Unfortunately, the 920 only gives you 3 settings to determine your brightness. It's either high, medium, or low. But the Z10, on the other hand, gives you a sliding scale. So you can find the right perfect blend of brightness. Maybe it's all the way up, all the way down, or you go along the slider and you find that right sweet spot. That's something that you can't get on the 920 in terms of pinpoint accuracy of what you want to get. With the Z10, you get an 1800 milliamp removable battery. It's very slim, so in case you want to pack an extra battery to keep in your office or in your bag, you can have that as well. On the 920, I can't show you the battery because it's not removable. So that might be disappointing for people who want to have the backup, but on the plus side, it has a 2000 milliamp battery. And from what I've seen, I've been using both for about a month or a little over a month now. And I'd say that the 920 definitely has better battery life. But on the plus side, in recent weeks, BlackBerry has released a update to the software that allows the battery to extend a little more. The battery life has improved, but in the end, if you're someone who's going to be out all the time, the 920 is going to give you better battery life when you talk about just what's on board. At the same time, if you're someone who really needs to push things, you have additional options with this. I'm sure they're going to be aftermarket extended batteries. You won't get that on the Lumia 920 unless you get a bulky case, which already adds on to a big frame. And on the Z10, you're going to get the benefit of having swappable batteries. Okay, so that's one advantage in the Z10's favor. But if you look at just what comes on board, obviously the 920 is going to be the better option for battery life. You'll also notice that there is a micro SD slot on the Z10. It supports up to 32 gigabytes of storage, and that's in addition to the 16 gigabytes that comes on board. So you've got a total of 48 in case you want to store a lot of files on there. With the 920, you're limited to 32 gigabytes, and that's a hard 32 gigabytes because that's how much memory you have internally, and there's no micro SD slot, as you can tell from the phone. So this is your micro SIM tray, so there's no way for you to expand on your storage. You're either going to have to get everything on the device or rely on cloud services. When you compare lock screens, you can see that there are some similarities, but obviously there are different approaches to it. With the Z10, I have indicators on the left that are always going to show me unread emails, tweets, Facebook messages. Anything that goes into what's called the hub will be there as well. The cool thing is I can actually have a custom message on here. So in case the phone is lost, it can be returned to me. And I also have a camera icon that if I hold down on it, within 2 seconds, I'm into the camera app and I'm snapping pictures, which can be a nice little shortcut. On the 920, it's kind of similar. At the bottom, I can set to have email, text messages, all of that have unread indicators as well, and it shows the date and time. There's no fast link to actually getting to the camera app other than unlocking and tapping the camera button on screen or the hardware button on the right. In terms of the software that you see on the home screen, there are some differences there as well. With the BlackBerry Z10, it's all about moving to the next step. So they have this concept where every time you unlock the screen, it shows you the most recent app that you've been in. It also shows up to 8 other recent apps. If you want to close one of them, just tap the X and you're going about your business. Or you can swipe to the right to launch a specific app. So it's kind of like your standard app drawer that you see in Android and iOS. You can also group certain apps. So in case here I have Facebook and Twitter together in a folder, I can just hold down and drag over LinkedIn. So now I have kind of like this social media folder that I can tap on and launch a specific app. With the 920, it's a little bit different. They have this thing called live tiles, which basically show you live information. Again, I have another indicator saying I have 14 unread messages. So when I scroll through, I can see these are the apps that I've set to always appear. And the live tile tells me in another email account, I have 1 unread message. And these are kind of like shortcuts to apps. For instance, I have a shortcut to a Pandora station right here. I have other camera apps. So you can have your favorite apps appear. You can also have live tiles. For instance, with Pandora, it'll tell me the song that's currently playing. Now, if I want to get to a specific app, all I have to do is swipe to the right, and this is more of a list rather than an app grid, and I can just browse through apps that way. So there are also different ways that each device handles notifications. Like I mentioned, live tiles is the way that Windows Phone chooses to notify you of something. When you have an app on the start screen, it's going to give you a little indicator saying, hey, you've got 18 apps to update. With the Z10, aside from the notifications that can pop up, they also have this thing for communication called the hub. And that's pretty cool because when you swipe up and to the right, I see a list of all of my different contacts information. I have my Facebook account linked, my Gmail account, calls. So if I get a BBM, a text message, an email, anything, I can always access it from the hub. Now the hub is kind of cool because it's sort of like your unified place where you go to get everything. All of your notifications can always be found in a central place. You don't really get that with the 920. It's more of a one-by-one thing at a time. You can handle this, you can handle that, go to this app, go to that app. I kind of like the hub as an alternative for that because there's one place that I always know to go to see my notifications and see what I need to do. Speaking of communication, they both have pretty good apps in terms of keeping you linked with other people. On the BlackBerry Z10, you have a nice little scroller that you can go to get your contacts, but it also has BBM. BBM is great because it's a way to have varied communications with people. You can have instant messages with people. You can have groups that organize so everyone communicates in the same place, and you can have text messages, place phone calls with certain BlackBerry users. You can place video calls and live screen sharing with other BlackBerry 10 users. So if you have a lot of people that are on BlackBerry, this is definitely going to be a better option for you because it's such a great way to communicate with people. On the flip side, you have on Windows Phone, you also have another nice little dialer app to go to your contacts, and it links with LinkedIn, Facebook, with Twitter, so you can actually see the most recent updates from your friends, and you can do the same thing on BlackBerry. But it also has this thing called Rooms. So let's say I want to start a room with my family. If we post photos, it'll all share here. Notes, you can have that linked here as well, and you can actually have like a live group chat. So it's easy to post texts, share your location with other people, and it's a nice way of communicating with other people. Now the problem is this is kind of limited to Windows Phone, just like BBM is limited to BlackBerry. But the difference is when you have BBM, you pretty much need to be on communicating with other BlackBerry people. So if you don't know a lot of BlackBerry people, this one is out the window for sure. With this, it's kind of the same. To get the full great experience, you need to know people on Windows Phone. But the difference is there's some ways that you can link out to Android or iOS, because most likely most of the people that you know are going to be on those phones. With Rooms, you can have some of the features that access, for instance, Notes. If you have OneNote synced on your Android or iOS device, you can get to it that way. If you have your calendar synced with either phone, you can kind of get to it that way. So you don't get the full experience of group chat and all that, but there are at least some links to the outside world. Apps will be a challenge regardless of which of these devices you prefer, because you won't have as many options as you do on Android and iOS. But when you compare just Windows Phone versus BlackBerry, it's kind of hard to determine which you would prefer. For instance, on the Z10, you're going to get more than 100,000 apps, but literally tens of thousands of those apps were just ported over from Android. Now, this is both a gift and a curse. In some instances, it's going to be good because you're going to get apps that you might not get because the developer didn't want to build for BlackBerry initially, but he had a nice Android app that he could just easily port over, and that's not much of an issue. But sometimes you will find dialogues that look weird or apps don't perform as well as you would hope. But I will give BlackBerry credit for at least getting some of these apps on however they can. With the 920, on the other hand, you won't have some of the bigger apps that just decide that they don't want to support BlackBerry, they don't want to support Windows Phone at all. But you will have more apps that were built specifically for the platform, and Nokia has done a good job of advocating developers to develop for their device. For instance, if you search for Netflix, you notice you will get a Netflix app on the 920. You will not get that on the Z10. The same goes for Pandora, Spotify, and a few other apps that might come in the future, but you will have more options on the 920 in terms of apps as of right now. But some of the bigger apps, they might have a better chance of coming to the Z10 because a developer might be more willing to port his app over. So it's all about what you want right now, and if what you want right now is have most of your favorite apps be available, the 920 is probably going to be a better choice for you because you're going to have a more diverse set of choices that you can access. The BlackBerry Z10 is the phone to get if you're someone who places communication above all else, because that's what this phone is all about, constantly keeping you connected to other people or information. This has, hands down, one of the best keyboards that you will find on a smartphone. The Z10 and BlackBerry in general are known for having great keyboards in terms of hardware, but this has a great software keyboard. When I start typing my name, Andrew, and I press space, and then I type a K, it instantly recognizes that I'm likely to mean to type Kamika, which is my next name. If I press A and swipe up, it recognizes that and inserts that. Because it recognizes things over time, it watches your trends, similar to SwiftKey on an Android device, and it figures out the next word that you mean to type. And it's very responsive, very fast, so I can start typing Andrew Kamika is the greatest person on the face of the Earth. Okay, and which is kind of true, obviously. The Lumia 920 earns its stripe by having a far superior camera. It has an 8.7 megapixel lens compared to the BlackBerry Z10's 8 megapixel lens. Now, obviously, having a bigger sensor isn't the issue here. It's the technology that makes it so much better. It has optical image stabilization, so when I'm shaking around, it improves it. Now, the Z10 also has image stabilization, but it's not as good as you get with the Lumia. It also has technology to let more light in, so it ends up being better. And aside from that, you can actually control things like ISO, white balance, and exposure settings to get things just the right way. When you look at the Z10, you don't have as many options. When you go to change your settings, you choose a standard picture, and you'll see that it has stabilization, but that's about it. You can change the scene mode, but it doesn't really have settings to let you really customize the experience. But on the bright side, it does have one nice feature, which is the ability to take multiple pictures at the same time. So in case you're snapping a picture and someone looks away or something, or they make a funny face, you see I can slide along this scale and be able to decide which is the best shot that I can go with. Now, obviously, that's a great feature, but it's not something that's going to set it apart from the Lumia 920 because it also has that feature, except it's called Smart Shot. It's pretty much kind of the same thing. It also has other options because it has what's called lens. It's basically you can download different shooting modes. So you can have panorama in case you want to do sweeping photos. You can have Glammy, which is going to improve your portraits. Or you can have Cinematograph, which allows you to create animated GIFs. If you choose the BlackBerry Z10 over the Nokia Lumia 920, you'll be gaining a lot, but at the same time, you'll be giving up quite a bit as well. Now, BlackBerry 10 has some clever features built into it. For instance, the story creator is great. It's an incredible communication device. It has a stellar keyboard and arguably the best browser on any mobile platform. But at the same time, you're giving up a solid camera, which you will get with the Nokia Lumia 920, which is arguably the best camera on smartphones. You're also giving up options like wireless charging built in. You won't get a better screen that you will with the Lumia 920, and you won't get as many color choices or as bold a design. But at the same time, the Lumia 920 has been available for quite a while. So if you haven't bought one yet, what's going to be the driving factor now? When you compare the two phones that are competing for third place, and you put Android to the side and you put iOS to the side, it's all about whether you prefer BlackBerry 10 or if you prefer Windows Phone 8. On the consumer level, I think Windows Phone 8 is more enjoyable and is a better overall platform because of the additional app choices, and pretty much anything you can do on BlackBerry 10, you can kind of do on Windows Phone 8. There's no distinguishing feature. So what really boils down to is which one you prefer. They both have 1.5 gigahertz dual-core processors. They both support 4G LTE. They both support NFC. But there are little things along the way that separate the two. For instance, Bluetooth 4.0 is possible in BlackBerry 10. It's not possible on the Lumia 920. So the question you have to ask is, do you want to place a premium on your camera, on your app choices? Which, if that's the case, you want to get the Lumia 920. If you want to place a premium on having the best keyboard, the best browser, which might be the two things you use the most often, and having a device that's more comfortable to hold, the Z10 might be that way to go. It's hard to pick a winner between one or the other because they appeal to such different audiences. But depending on which one is best for you, you really can't go wrong with either option.